Hey, it's Mirella Manelli, and today I'm gonna show you my zigzag highlight technique to achieve this gorgeous espresso melt hair color using all Kenra color. Now let's go ahead and get started. So to get started on our espresso melt, what I'm gonna be doing is adding in some highlights, and we're just gonna be adding in really subtle highlights using a zigzag parting. And I just want to bring up some of these highlights just so we can have added dimension. But our overall goal is to richen and deepen her overall look. So we're gonna be going in with Demi-Permanent throughout. So now what I'm gonna do is mix up her lightener formula and get started. So for her sectioning, I decided to go ahead and utilize her natural parting. If you watch any of my videos, you know I always start out with just working with how the hair likes to naturally live and fall. So we're just utilizing that section right there and then taking her from the apex all the way down to behind the ear. And honestly, I have her just split into 4 quadrants. So even from here on the apex all the way down to the center. And we're gonna be working with diagonal sectioning throughout this entire look. So I'm gonna start out in the back section. Now I'm gonna kind of work right here by the occipital and then just do a deep zigzag section. And don't worry if your zigzag sections are not perfect. And then I'm gonna do another zigzag underneath for extra diffusion. And I love this technique for just creating really seamless lines. And then using my weaving comb, I'm gonna further highlight that. So she's got quite a bit of background and dropout, which we're actually gonna be coloring in just a second as well. Then I'm gonna insert my board here. Now, because we're gonna be doing an espresso color melt, I don't wanna take her highlights all the way to the root area. So what I'm gonna be doing is adding in my Demi-Permanent Formula that we're actually gonna be adding in between each of the foils. So this is 5B, mixed out of 1:2 mixing ratio with 9 volume developer. And then from here, I'm gonna add in my lightener in that mid zone. And then I'm just gonna blend that up right into that Demi-Permanent. So we'll get kind of like a nice soft diffusion between those 2 colors. And then I'm gonna go ahead and flat wrap this. And I'm gonna continue on up through this entire section. And all my sections are gonna be about 2 fingers wide. I'm just gonna add in my Demi-Permanent right here, just about a couple inches. And then add in my lightener. Now the trick with this is you do want to add enough lightener so when you do this blend, it's just a quick little push up of your lightener. So that way you do have that blend from that 5B into our lightener. You'll just get a kind of a slight color melt. Now still will need some toning, which we're gonna be doing after. Now for my lightener, I am using Beyond Bond lightener. I really love this lightener for overlap specifically. You can see she has some previously lightened ends. So for added protection, this is a great choice. Personally, I really love a 1:2 mixing ratio, so that's what I'm using because the viscosity is perfect for foil application. You can see this is a really quick and easy application. I'm almost at the top here, so it makes it go by really quickly. Now this is gonna be a really good placement for anyone that just wants subtle ribbons throughout their hair because this diagonal back, sectioning is definitely going to give you that soft ribboning effect because of the way it veils over on the back. Now for my lightener mixing ratio, I really like a 1:2 because I do love the viscosity and the way that it helps me saturate through some highlights. And I am using 20 volume developer. So now I'm on my very last foil. So you can see I have just 4 foils in total on this side. So this is gonna complete a total of 8 foils for both sides. And I'm gonna do the same exact thing to the other side. Now I'm complete with the back, and you can see we only have 8 foils. So this technique is really quick and a great way to maximize the amount of brightness that we're gonna achieve and the dimension we're gonna get with minimal foils. So now I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the front. So we're gonna do something really similar. We're gonna be taking in all diagonal sections throughout, still doing zigzag partings. However, we want to add a little bit more brightness around that face frame area. So we're gonna move our highlights a little closer, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like. So what I'm gonna be doing is working parallel with her hairline because I do want a little bit of a natural brightness for that face frame. So what I'm gonna be doing is taking my first section right here. And we're gonna be adding in about 2 to 3 back-to-backs. Now the more highlights and foils that you put closer together, obviously the more brightness you're gonna achieve. And because she kind of has a little bit of a separation here on her hairline, this is gonna be foil number 1, and then we're gonna add in just 2 more here, so that way we can maximize the amount of brightness around the face frame. Now because we are working with the face frame, I do want these highlights to come up a little higher. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take it all the way to the top. However, I am using this board which has some teeth on it, so it does prevent me from getting all the way to the root, which is perfect. I want these to just kind of slightly live right off of the base. So I have my next subsection here, and you can see it's about a finger width. So I'm gonna take another highlight, and I'm gonna go ahead and use my weaving comb in this entire section. I personally like doing this because it just brings the highlights from all directions, even in a vertical motion. So it just has this really seamless diffusion. All right, so this is a pretty wide section that I'm working with here. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and split this in half. And this is usually around the area where it's that temple area, it's a little bit more sparse. And for this piece specifically right here, I'm gonna go ahead and weave that entire section because it is right there along her hairline. So for this interior section here, I don't want to count this as my face frame. So what I'm going to do is make sure that this is zigzagged. I want to kind of mirror what we did on this other side here. So I'm going to zigzag underneath and then highlight this. So if you really wanted to, you can technically zigzag the top to really mirror and do exactly what we did to the back. But just for time saving purposes, we're still going to get a very similar effect. I just want to make sure we're adding depth in this section and have a little bit more background. Now I wanna make sure I have enough face frame going on here. So what I'm gonna do is I wanna still zigzag in here. So I'm gonna take something a little wider and then come in a little closer here. So I think it'll make sense once you see this parting. Because at the end of the day, we are gonna have these two separate sections again, because this is part of my interior. So I'm gonna clean this up just a little bit more. And I'm gonna highlight this entire section. Again, I want the maximum amount of brightness right here along the face. So feel free to customize it, according to your client and their needs and their head shape and their hair density. All of those things are gonna change as you do this technique. You might add in more foils or less foils, because at the end of the day, it's all about giving your client what their dream hair end result is. So here's where I'm gonna add in that zigzag right underneath. We're gonna now continue on with our seam pattern. So you can see we have more depth going on towards that interior. We have more dropout, we have a subsection. So that's really the main difference between that front hairline and the back. And I'm also gonna add in our demi right here, because now we're inside. I wanna make sure that these highlights aren't as high up. Now for this section right here, we're gonna go in 2 fingers deep, still going diagonal. So now I'm at the very top, and this is gonna be my very last foil going on here. So what you'll see here, you have a couple options. We can just go ahead and leave this out and leave it really deep, but I feel like I want to add in just one more highlight. So this is the front section and this is the back section. So I'm just gonna marry these two together and we're gonna create one large section. Now I kind of like to visualize how the hair naturally falls, and you can see it's gonna veil over this way. So this is why we're gonna go in diagonally right here on this round part of her head, and it's just going to give us that added pop and dimension right underneath. Now that I have all her foils in on this side, I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side. So now her foils are complete. What we're gonna be doing now so we can really richen this up is I'm gonna be adding in Demi-Permanent. We're gonna take that same 5B 1:2 mixing ratio formula, but put it in between the foils. So that's kind of why we added it to the root area. So that way we can make sure that it has a nice blend throughout the entire look. So what I'm gonna do now is work from the bottom up and then process her for 20 minutes. Now the reason why I chose 5B is it's gonna give us that really rich, beautiful, chocolatey brown. The B series stands for brown at levels 7 and below, and beige for levels 8 and above. It just has this really rich, chocolatey end result that your clients are gonna love. Now, anytime I'm going darker, deeper, richer, I really do like using Demi-Permanent. Now you can use a permanent shade throughout this, but because we're going darker, I'm not looking for any vibrancy out of the shade. I think if we were going more with a red tone, I might consider the permanent so that way we can get that natural underlying pigment to be exposed. But for this case, because we're going for something rich and chocolatey, Demi-Permanent is the perfect choice. So I'm gonna continue putting on this Demi-Permanent from the bottom up and then work throughout the front. And then once I'm done applying this, we're just gonna process her for at least 20 minutes. I am gonna take a peek at her foils at that 20-minute mark, but I'm pretty confident that we'll be really close to being able to remove this. So one thing to note is that the Demi-Permanent line is non-progressive, so you don't have to worry about it over depositing. You don't have to worry about it getting darker and darker as the longer that you leave it on. So once it's done processing at 25 minutes, you're good to go. Now that we're all done processing, you can see we got a really gorgeous shade. I absolutely love the lift that we got, and she only needed to be processed for 20 minutes in order for us to get this beautiful dimension that we got going on. And now we're going to do a global gloss using 7B at a 1:2 mixing ratio with 9 volume developer, and we will process it for the full 20 minutes. And I think that's gonna give us that really rich chocolatey espresso melt that we're trying to achieve. I'm gonna go through and do some vertical partings. I just find that sometimes this makes it go by a little quicker, but you can see the melt that we got by putting in that Demi-Permanent into that lightener. We got a really seamless blend where you kind of don't need a shadow root, and that's exactly what we were trying to achieve here. We just want that slightly rooted effect from those highlights. So even if you're not planning on doing a global espresso melt on every single client, you can still take some inspiration from that lightener application that we did and really utilize it in a whole bunch of different placements and looks that you're trying to achieve. One thing to note about the Demi-Permanent line is you do have the option to do a 1:1 mixing ratio or a 1:2. So the difference between that is basically the 1:1 is going to give you maximum saturation. You're gonna have a lot more deposit of those color pigments versus the 1:2. And this is why I chose to do the 1:2, because I still want a little bit of translucency with the look that we're trying to achieve. I want to be able to see the dimension, so I'm not really looking for maximum saturation and coverage with this. I want this to still look really dimensional. So if you are trying to get a general type of coverage from a toner, a 1:2 is the perfect option. We got a really gorgeous result, really rich chocolatey brunette espresso melt. I really love how the 5B added a lot of depth, but those highlights just gave the right amount of dimension, and then complementing with the 7B to give us that chocolatey, almost kind of dark blonde effect, but still looks really dimensional and still in the brunette family. So I really hope you enjoyed this hair tutorial, and if you did, please give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. Be sure to check out all of the other amazing hair tutorials right here on this channel, and I will see you in the next video.